It's been 2 decades in the making, an anthology on race and law with a title borrowed from an iconic line by iconic musician James Braude. Say It Loud on race, law, history, and culture explores everything from Nat Turner's slave rebellion to Brown versus Board of Education, from Thurgood Marshall to Clarence Thomas, from Donald Trump to George Floyd. Its author, Harvard Law professor Randall Kennedy, joined me yesterday to discuss. Randall Kennedy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
So obviously, Supreme Court starts a term, potentially monumentally important cases. It seems to me, as an outsider, that when Chief Justice Roberts sides with liberals, Clarence Thomas is the de facto Chief Justice. Here's what you wrote about Thomas in part. If Thomas is not a sellout, then the term has no utility. He's the paradigmatic figure whom many African Americans rightly despise, the black who, from a position of privilege attained by the sponsorship of powerful whites, consistently subverts struggles for African American collective elevation, all the while deploying his blackness as a shield against criticism. You also write you were solicitous of him at first, and then you said, I am a sap. Who changed, Thomas or you?
Well, I think I woke up and Justice Thomas continued to vote in a way and to write in a way that alienated him from people who were willing to give him a chance. I mean, you know, I'm on the leftward end of the political spectrum, but I was one of those who, though an ideological adversary of Justice Thomas, said, well, he's on the court. Let's see what he does. Let's see how he acts. And Justice Thomas has been a thorough disappointment, even for people who had initially a low opinion of him. Justice Thomas has written a number of opinions, has cast a number of votes that are bad for American democracy and that are certainly bad for Black America. And that's why I was so critical of him and remain extremely critical of him.
When you hear people like Thomas and, well, it's actually a bipartisan aisle crossing kind of thing, actually deny that there is an aisle. Breyer, Coney Barrett saying we're not partisan hacks. What's your reaction?
Well, I think those comments are ridiculous. And you're absolutely right. Justice Breyer is the senior most liberal, and he's just written a book which has as part of its title, The Perils of Politics, making it seem as though the Supreme Court is above politics. Of course it's not. I mean, if that were so, how can one explain the fights over confirmation of justices? The Supreme Court is inevitably political. An elected politician, namely the President of the United States, nominates. Other elected politicians, namely the senators, confirm. Clearly, it matters who these people are. Clearly, our law is largely dependent on the personnel that make it to these seats on the Supreme Court of the United States.
So your views of Thomas have evolved. So have your views about the possibilities of racial equality. You used to call yourself a confident optimist, talking about a goal being reaching the racial promised land. You've lowered your sights. To what and why?
Well, I've lowered my sights because in the last few years, we've seen a level of racial resentment, racial anger, in some instances, racial hatred, that I thought I thought were really in our back view mirror. I did not think, for instance, that we would see another ambitious politician who wanted to become president of the United States clearly traffic in racial animus. I didn't think of, I thought, well, whatever your view, whatever your feelings, you would hide it. that that just wasn't a politically saleable prescription. Well, I was wrong. Donald Trump became president of the United States. And I think more than any single thing, the ascension of Donald Trump showed me that we were not as far down the road to racial decency as I had once thought.
Well, for him to make that sale, though, there got to be a lot of buyers, tens of millions. So what does that say about the American people?
It has a very sobering lesson. The fact of the matter is that there are millions of Americans who, if they don't have racial prejudice of a strong sort, they're certainly willing to tolerate racial prejudice of a strong sort. So I think that the election of Donald Trump, and even in the last election, when he lost, he still got over 70 million votes. And I think that's very sobering, given that racial resentment wasn't the only thing he was running on, clearly not, but it was certainly an important part of what he was trying to sell.
You know, Randall Kennedy, before you go, one other thing you talk about in the book, you talk about so many things. I don't even know if this is a word, but the dememorializing movement. I think that's my word. I don't think it's yours. The whole notion, as you write, like the Royals, the insignia at Harvard, a slaveholder. You also write, I think you went to Yale, Vice President Calhoun's name taken off a residential hall because his notion was that slavery was not only not bad, but was a good kind of thing. Why isn't dememorializing an important thing and an important statement to the people that those memorials grossly offend when they literally and figuratively hang over their heads?
It can be. My position is that memorials can have a wide variety of meanings. So take Harvard Law School. That's right. Harvard Law School got rid of its insignia because it was based on a crest of a slave-owning family.
Right, the Royals.
Now, the people who wanted to get rid of that said, that's terrible. We ought to be more respectful of those who were oppressed, those who were enslaved. So let's get rid of it. Okay, it seems to me that's a sensible argument. On the other hand, there were people at the law school who took the position that, well, maybe we should hold on to this insignia to memorialize the enslaved. Let's not do anything that's going to allow us to forget the terrible aspects of our history. And I would say that with respect to all of this. John C. Calhoun, that's right. You can get rid of him, and there's an argument for that. On the other hand, there is an argument for keeping John C. Calhoun's name on the building, educating people about John C. Calhoun and his legacy. That, too, it seems to me, is a perfectly reasonable way to go.
Before you go, very quickly, early on in this discussion, you referred to yourself as on the left end of the political spectrum. For those who are watching who say, well, wait a second, that Randall Kennedy, I consider him a conservative intellectual. What do you say to those people, Randall Kennedy?
I say that, frankly, I'm not so concerned with labels. Ask me a bunch of questions. Ask me about the substance of my beliefs. Ask me about, do I think that American society is a well-ordered society now? No, I do not. In fact, it has never been well-ordered. We have a society that is cruel. We have a society that marginalizes people. We have a society that is in dire need of reform, in which we democratize our society and in which we redistribute wealth and power in our society. If you want to call that conservative, fine, then I'm a conservative.
Randall Kennedy, it's good to see you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you very much.